Decatur Book Festival is a nonprofit. It depends on sponsors and donations to bring great authors to Decatur each year. Please consider a tax-deductible donation to support the festival by going to the festival website. Lastly, please take a moment to make sure all your device ringtones are turned off. Now, please let me introduce our moderator today. Snowden Wright was born and raised in Mississippi. He is the author of American Pop, a Wall Street Journal Book of the Month, and NPR Best Book of the Year. His newest book is The Queen City Detective Agency, and he will introduce all of our authors today. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you to all of you for coming out, and thank you to the Decatur Book Festival for hosting this wonderful event. It's always a great time. Thank you to the people who organize the festival and the people behind the scenes, the volunteers who do the real hard work. We've got a great panel for you today. It's a panel on, wait for it, suspense. See what I did there? I built the suspense. We have three amazing authors on the docket, and I'm going to start off with the woman to my left, Ella Stratton, who I'll be referring to as Shelley for the rest of the panel. Ella Stratton is an NAACP Image Award nominated author and former crime reporter who has written more than a dozen books under different pen names in just about every genre, from thrillers to romance to historical fiction. She currently lives in Maryland with her husband, their daughter, and their tuxedo cat. Shelley, you seem to have written books in pretty much every genre. I'm curious what led you to be so genre omnivorous, and also how would you define the genre of your latest book?
I'm a genre omnivorous writer because I'm a genre omnivorous reader. I read just about a little bit of everything. If the story is compelling, that's more important to me than the genre itself. So I dabbled in all that as a reader. So as a writer, it only made sense eventually to progress and hop around depending on what I felt the story needed. This story, In Deadly Company, my latest release, is a mystery, but it's a dark comedy, which is one of the first times I've done something like that. But like I said, if I felt the story needed that and I felt it needed a more comedic tone, I said, okay, I will follow it in that direction.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Our next author is Katherine Wood. Katherine Wood is a native of Mississippi and a graduate of the University of Southern California. She is the author of the novel Lady Killer, and also writes under the pen name Catherine St. John. She lives in Atlanta with her husband, their two children, a naughty pug, and a ferocious kitty. Catherine, you like me are from Mississippi, and you now live in Atlanta, and yet your novels take place all around the world. I discovered the term destination thriller when researching your oeuvre. I'm curious what led you to escape your own geographical biography through your fiction. What led you to write books set in these tropical places?
I love to travel, and it's an escape when I'm writing it. When you're writing a book, you're going to be in that world not only for the year or however long it takes to write it, but the entire time you're promoting it. You know, for the rest of your life, you're going to be revisiting that world. So writing a book that is set in a place like St. Barth's, where my latest book, Sunburned, is set, is like going on vacation every day.
Great. Thank you. Our third author is Kaira Rouda. Kaira Rouda is an award-winning USA Today and Amazon Charts best-selling author of contemporary fiction. She is a founding member of the Kill Author Club, a bi-monthly live show supporting authors. She is also a member of the Sisters in Crime, Mystery Writers of America, Women's Fiction Author Association, and the International Thriller Writers Association. She lives in Southern California with her family. Kaira, your latest novel has a unique structure. it jumps back and forth between the past and the present, and the chapters are even titled Then and Now. That is a theme I found in all the works that we're under discussion today, how the past bubbles up into the present. And I'm curious how you went about deciding on that particular structure for the novel.
Yeah, I'm terrible to answer structure questions because I'm a pantser, which means I don't outline. I just kind of write by the seat of my pants. So I didn't know. I knew for Jill Is Not Happy. I like marriage thrillers too, and this is a marriage thriller probably because I've been married a really long time. Anyway, so when I came up with this story in my brain, I had a character named Jill pop into my head, and then because of the the nursery rhyme, of course, Jack had to be her husband, and it kind of started with that. And the original title of the book was Marital Privilege, which is not as fun as Jill Is Not Happy, but it's based on the idea that if you have a secret together as a couple, you can't be compelled to testify against each other. So in this story, Jill is trying to remind her husband that they need to stay together.
Great. Wonderful.
Because of things in the past.
Correct. Oh, wonderful. Thank you. This is a question for all of you. Social commentary is a perennial theme in thrillers, especially these days. All your books deal with class divides to varying degrees. Why do you think that idea is so pertinent in our current social, economic, and political climate?
That's a sticky wicket. Go ahead.
Well, I think that socioeconomic class affects everything. And I think it is very clear that the wealthy, especially the extremely wealthy, live by very different rules than the rest of us. And is that fair? No, it's not fair. So I think that it's interesting to explore that and to explore the things that the extremely wealthy can get away with that the rest of us can't. And what that does to a person when you can get away with a lot, and how in interacting with other people who are of a different socioeconomic class, like the power dynamics associated with that. I find it endlessly interesting.
Yeah, and I feel like I've always kind of had a thought that my people are usually fairly wealthy. They're products of the suburbs, which aren't the extreme. Some of my characters have the extreme wealth, but when you don't have to worry about where your next meal is coming from, when you don't have those kind of struggles and you're fortunate enough to live that way, it's easy to stop caring about things that matter because you kind of get into your bubble. And so my characters quite often get a sharp reminder that if you're caring about the curtains, you're probably caring about things that don't matter, and you should kind of look beyond that. Because I do think you can get caught up in it, the grass is always greener kind of idea, and lose sight of the broader picture of what is happening today and what is going on. And I find it my job to kind of shine a light on narcissists because they're like 25% of the population, whether they're the extremely wealthy or not. But we need to see them, and kind of I hopefully will show you them, and you can watch out. And yeah.
My book is told from the perspective of a personal assistant who does not come from that world, which is why it's a dark comedy, because she is able to be the normal person in the room who's shining a light on the some level ridiculousness of wealth and their obsessions or their expectations of what their lives should be and what they should get from people. So for me, it was fun to not only show that world, but to have this little fly on the wall that is pointing out that your expectations, what you're telling people to do, is just so strange and bizarre. And so to me, it was a fun aspect to not only do that in a mystery, but also do it as, like you said, the social commentary aspect of it.
All your books are funny. And I think a little bit of funny is lacking in fiction in general and thrillers in particular. It's sort of like salting the chocolate. It heightens the suspense. How did you go about injecting humor into your latest books and as well as your any other past books?
I love having dark humor because usually in my stories, if someone is making you laugh, they're trying to deflect from what they're actually up to. And so if Jill in this case will make you like chuckle a little bit with her, then probably there's something going on that she doesn't want you to know about. So I think humor is a great way to distract and deflect. Also, I mean, my characters tend to be rather villainous. So to hopefully keep you turning the page, I'd like you to like them a little bit at least. And so if you can laugh along with her at some of her shenanigans, then I find that you maybe don't want to be friends with Jill, but you'll want to, keep reading.
Like Shelley said, I think that there's definitely a level of ridiculousness that goes along with wealth. And I think that when you have a character that is from outside of that and can comment on it, most of the people who are reading, I mean, some of them may be ridiculously wealthy, but most are not. And so I think that it's observations that are things that we all can see and can laugh about and have maybe observed ourselves. So it's definitely fun to have that kind of like witty commentary. And another place that I like to put repartee is like in your dialogue with your characters. It's really fun when you're building relationships between characters. It's like, what is the dialogue between these characters like? And is it funny? Is it like, do they have like snappy dialogue? Or between these other two characters, is it always a little bit awkward? So I think that's another place that the comedy within a thriller can come out.
And I think a lot of times in suspense and mysteries, we're dealing with a lot of morally gray or dark characters. So infusing humor kind of breaks the tension, and it can also humanize them. Their behavior that, like you said, can be very distasteful. If they have a sense of humor, it can warm up the reader to the story. They want to stay invested in this character, even if they don't necessarily agree with what they're doing on the page.
Beach read. The term beach read is often used as a pejorative, which I find unfair. Who doesn't like to read? I think we're all here because we like to read. And who doesn't like the beach? Do you consider your latest novels beach reads? And if so, why? And if not, why not?
I mean, the title of my novel is Sunburned. So
I say yes.
And it's set at the beach. Actually, they never go to the beach. They go to beach clubs. They go on a yacht. They go in the water, but they don't ever actually go to a beach, which was an argument that I had with my cover designer when he wanted to make the cover a beach. I was like, no, they don't go to the beach. But I actually love the term beach read. I love to read on a beach, and what's better than that?
I know my people do go to the beach in my book. So usually she's sneaking around doing things at the beach, but she's not really enjoying herself. But I do think the term that I don't like sometimes, I don't know why, is popcorn thriller. That one honks me off more than beach read. Like I think there's a broad range of beach reads, but I don't think that a lot of people get that put on there. They were trying to put that on the back of Jill's Not Happy, a popcorn thriller. I'm like, no, I don't like that at all. And I really don't know why I don't like it. I don't know. It just seems less than. But beach read, I'm fine with.
Same. I purposely wrote this one because I wanted it to be a beach read, because my previous book, Do What Godmother Says, I felt was dark. It was set in the Harlem Renaissance. It dealt with cults and murders, and they put it out in June. I was just like, that was a choice. So this one, I was like, well, if you're going to put it around summer, I would prefer to have a book that feels more tone appropriate to read on a beach.
Yeah.
The terms thriller and crime novel are often used interchangeably, which I think is incorrect, because the difference, in my opinion, is sort of like the difference between bourbon and whiskey. All bourbon is a whiskey, but not all whiskey is bourbon. How would y'all differentiate between thrillers and crime novels? And do you work in one mode or the other?
I mean, I feel like to me, a crime novel is maybe more about, like, in my mind, that's like organized crime, or people like that's what it says to me. I don't
like a lot of police.
Yeah, like if they're police, maybe like they're like. I mean, obviously, murder is a crime.
Right.
and there's going to be murder in a thriller.
Right. But if they get away with it, then,
It's not a crime thriller.
right, exactly. So I don't know, but it seems like the whole category is crime, and then they put like different, but I don't know why that is. I don't know.
I would agree. I was like,
You're stumping the panel, Snowden.
Oh no.
I guess a crime novel would be more procedural. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we were to differentiate crime novels and thrillers with the utilization of, wait for it, suspense, the title of the panel, how do you go about manipulating suspense in your work? How do you ratchet it up or ratchet it down? How do you inject suspense into your fiction?
I mean, I like personally, again, this is a marriage thriller. And when I'm doing a marriage thriller, I hadn't done one yet with 2 points of view, like the husband and the wife, which was really fun to do. So I found it a lot easier as well. Like the favorite daughter was all one point of view, which was the wife. And then Best Day Ever, my first book, was all the guy. And so they can try to say too much to you, and that's tough. But in this case, if Jill was going to tell you too much, then I can kick her off stage and bring Jack on to tell his side of the story and hopefully keep you, kind of guessing. Cause I kind of, when I'm writing, I picture them like actors on the stage, and I'm like, oh no, she's going to say too much. Stop, Jill, stop. And then I'll drag her off the stage. So I think suspense, in that sense, if you have multiple personalities, that's a tool I've found is really fun. Also short time frames. So I like to have like books that are 24 hours or 3 days or something like that, because then in my brain, as I'm writing, I also like kind of feel the pressure to keep it moving.
Totally. It's like a ticking clock. I do the same thing. Most of my books like take place over like a week or a short truncated amount of time where things are going really, really wrong. Yeah. And what you said too about, having different points of view, it's always interesting to me when you can have different points of view and they're giving you different versions of what happens. And I think that creates suspense. I think that one of the delicate dance of being a suspense writer is about giving enough information that readers do not get lost and they don't get bored. But then, allowing them to get a clue that leads to another clue that leads to another clue. But like, if you hold too much back, people they get frustrated, right? So you have to know when to deliver the information that you got to make them want it, and then give it. But there's a point past which if you do not give the information, the reader feels like, come on.
Yeah,
well,
you can't trick them.
Yeah.
Know when to hold them, know when to fold them.
Yeah.
I like playing with the timeline, and it sounds like the whole panel is on this, the bouncing back and forth. In the present, someone's dead or someone's missing, and now the reader has to go into the past. It's like, okay, well, where did that come from? Or why are they missing? And then you leap back to the present again, and you're giving little tidbits of present tense information and then making them have to go to see the backstory. And they're anticipating each time they leap back and forth what is going to happen next in the story.
Yeah. How does the past inform the present storyline?
Exactly.
Yeah.
There seems to be a through line with all of your work, with all of your most recent works that could not be intentional, but it was curious to me. There seems to be a central influence on at least two of your works, which is the movie Glass Onion, a Knives Out mystery. I definitely know it was an influence on Shelley's book because in the intro, she gives it a shout out. I've been thinking a lot these days about how cinema and television influence fiction, especially given the fact that the most popular TV shows and films are crime related. They are thrillers. They are procedurals. What was the influence of cinema or television on your work now or in the past?
Okay, I guess we'll start this time. Yes, Glass Onion was a huge influence along with Clue, the cult classic. It's because I had seen the movie so many times since I was a little girl. And so I love the interplay between the characters and the buildup of the mystery. And I even use these switching perspectives to say, like, was it this ending or was it this ending? And so the reader comes to the end and finds out this is what actually happened. I think there's always going to be a dialogue between film and books and film. A lot of the mysteries that we're seeing now on streaming services were adaptations of mystery books. And so to me, it makes sense that we kind of have this interplay and we influence each other.
Agreed. I like that. I'm just sitting here trying to think of what to say. No, I got something. So, I have, my most, I guess my biggest nod to a TV series was I loved Succession. And so when I sat down to write a book called Beneath the Surface, it was about a family, a patriarch of a family who takes his, family on his new yacht to decide which of the three spoiled kids he's going to leave his company to, and then bad things happen. And what was exciting about that one is it's been optioned for a film. So that one, I know, hopefully. Anyway, so that was really fun. So the director who optioned it, he's this amazing up and coming director from Mexico, and he has this vision for it. And he shows me the screenplay that he's written. And my book is scary. I mean, people do terrible things, but with the screenplay, it's even scarier. Like they really push. I'm like, wow, this is so twisted, but okay, good. Carry on. Get at me. Yeah.
It's funny because in film, it's so truncated. Like if we're talking about obviously television series are kind of a longer version of a book and films are a shorter version of a book. So, when you are writing a book, the film Glass Onion, I actually did go back and rewatch that because Sunburned is a murder mystery. And this is the first time that I've written kind of like a straight locked room murder mystery. It's not a locked room. It's a locked yacht. But, and like how that happens, it's a lot easier to study a movie that's 2 hours long than a book. I mean, like, yes, I did go back and read some Agatha Christie and, I went back and looked at that kind of thing too. But, I'll stop it and be like, okay, we're at this point and this is what's happening. Oh, we're at this point and there's a reversal that's happening. This is like, and it helped me be in my mind, like, oh, I'm at this point. I need something to happen between this and this. Otherwise it's going to feel like a lull, so going to movies, or to books, to see what other people have done, it can often be a big inspiration.
Do y'all think about potential adaptations of your work other than the potential payday?
I'm currently adapting a number of my books.
So have you worked in screenwriting before? I
came from that world.
Oh,
I was an actress in my former life and, a screenwriter. So for me, it's like a very natural progression and I love it because you completely think of the book in a different way because it's visual storytelling and you cannot be in somebody's head. You have to show it. You can't tell it. So it's really interesting and I kind of like viewed the book as a jumping off place. So, with the series, it won't be exactly like it is in the book, which is really fun.
Yeah, my daughter's a screenwriter, so we've collaborated on adapting several of my novels, and it's just such a different skill set, though. I mean, I learned a lot doing that, but I know I'm not a screenwriter. Let's just say it that way. But I do find we were collaborating. There's a program called Final Draft. And so she can be in LA and I can be at home in Laguna Beach and we can be working on the same document at the same time or the same screenplay script, whatever it's called. And she'll be doing the, when it says interior night and then there's this like description that's so tight and the words are all perfect. And she's working on all of that and like the formatting because I don't know any of that. And she's like, Mom, you just work on the dialogue, which is already in my head because it's my book. So I just on my dialogue. And she's like, what page are you on? I'm like, 25. And she's still on page 1 doing the seems it up. So we have just way different styles. But I mean, I think it's a brilliant art, but I'm sticking to the novel writing part and letting her do that. But it was fun.
Yeah, I've had a couple of books optioned. None have actually made it to screen. But I will say that I have accepted that the screenplay can be a completely different animal than what it was for the book. That once you hand it over to a production company or to a screenwriter unless you say that I get complete control over what this is going to be, that I may not recognize what is on screen, but I'm okay with that. As long as they take the story in an interesting place. Like, for example, we ended up not going forward with it, but I had a producer who was like, I had a book called Not So Perfect Strangers that was supposed to be inspired by strangers on a train. And so I have one pivotal moment where the characters meet and one knocks on her car window and says, "Let me in." And so the story moves from there. The producer's idea was, first season is she opens the door. Second season is she doesn't open the door. What happens to their lives from that point on? And I was like, I never thought of that. But to me, once I hand it over to someone else, I'm like, their ideas could take it to a whole different place. And so I'm fully accepting of that. I never go in saying like, I wonder what this will look like on screen, because I've come to terms with it may not resemble at all what I wrote. Yeah.
Interesting. Shelley, both you and Katherine have used pen names in the past. And so as someone who's never even considered using a pen name in his work, I was curious what led to that decision.
Well, I mean, you have such a good name. Why would you change it? Snowden, like, who has that name? It's a great name. I don't, my story isn't very interesting. I chose Catherine St. John as a pen name. St. John is a family name. I like the way it sounded. And then I did a couple of books under a pen name, and I was like, now I'm just going to use my real name. And then I used my real name. I didn't put too much thought into it. In fact, I probably should have put more thought into it, because it became more complicated than it needed to be.
Mine was a very practical consideration. I work full time. And a lot of the organizations and companies that you work for say as you sign, we want approval of work that you do outside to make sure it doesn't conflict with, especially in nonprofits, with the mission of our organization. And I'm like, I'm not going to let my employer control my career as an author. So my concession was, okay, I will do work, but I won't do it under the same name that I use within my organization.
That's much more interesting.
It is. We're all
I'm going to steal your story.
That's a better answer, I think.
Kaira, you're originally from the Midwest, and now you live in Southern California. And your books, I have read all of them, but they take place in different parts of the world, the country. I'm interested in how place influences your work and how you think place has influenced you as a writer. And I present that question to all of you, because I think all of you, any writer, place must have a factor in their work.
Yeah, I do find that when I'm writing, if the setting is someplace that I know, my characters can come to life. So it's a lot of my first books were all set in Ohio, so in Columbus, because that's where I lived. And then we moved to California. And so I find a lot of them are now set in California, but my characters will also like hop back to the Midwest. I also went to Vanderbilt, so I have some settings down in the South too, and go Vandy versus Alabama today. Anyway, just a little flex. But yeah, I do find that though, if I don't know the place, like for example, Jill is Not Happy, it opens with them taking a road trip to the Utah National Parks. And if you haven't been, you have to go, because it's so stunning, and these arches and sandstone and like caverns, and anyway, it's beautiful. And my husband and I were driving there, and I was looking over the edge of Bryce Canyon down to the hoodoos, the sandstone sculptures, and the sun setting, and there were all these shadows forming. And he's like, "You're going to kill somebody here, aren't you?" I'm like, "Absolutely." So like in that case, I'd never been there before, but I'm like, okay, this has got to go in a book. So yeah. But other times I kill just in my neighborhood. So it's
How about the rest of y'all with regard to plays?
I mean, setting definitely does influence how you kill. It definitely does. Yeah. And I think it influences everything about how we interact with each other. Like I find that, for example, here we are in the South, and in the South, people are They seem to be very warm and not in a hurry. And my reasoning for that is that, it's warm outside. And so we're going to move a little slower, and we have time. It's okay. Whereas places where it's very cold, you notice people move really quickly because it's very cold outside and they're cold. So these are my reasons in my head for the way this is. But I say that because it does influence, what's going on in a book too. Are you in, and I love setting things in, a location that you would expect to be like this absolute dream of location, like so beautiful, like St. Bart's. But then the things that are going on underneath the surface are absolutely ugly and terrible, and so maybe it's better to be on your couch reading about it.
Yeah. I set most of my books in Washington, D.C. or the Washington, D.C. area. That's where I grew up. But more so, I choose to set it there because most books that are set there are political dramas that most people will be very familiar of it taking place in the White House or it taking place on K Street or some espionage story. But where I grew up, it could be, I could incorporate elements of the inner city of DC that people did not know exists, or the suburbs, those communities. And so I shine a spotlight on those just to give people a different insight or a different take on something they feel is familiar, but they may have not actually been there to see what it's really like.
And you used to be a crime reporter, yes? How did that influence your work? And with other panelists, did you have other careers that have influenced your work as a fiction writer?
People ask this a lot, and I will say that I do not, I've covered Hell's Angels raids, drug raids. I've covered murder trials. I don't pull directly from those experiences, but what I do pull from is that when you're sitting in a room with people like that, you see them for human beings. Not to say that the crime they committed was not heinous or wrong, but there was a time, and I tell this story, I was in a murder trial and the guy was waiting in his hearing. He had killed a 14-year-old girl and my cell phone accidentally went off. And I was mortified, and the bailiff told me to get up and leave. And I turned, this murderer is laughing. He's laughing at the fact that I had to leave the room. And so I'm like, that was a very surreal human moment. And it gives me insight into, even though from our perspective that these are these horrendous characters, this is a guy who committed a murder who's giggling because my cell phone went off. So that gives me insight in the characters, and that even though you're writing about the horrible things they've done, remember from their perspective that they're just regular human beings.
And Kaira, you used to work in real estate. Did that?
Yeah, I used to say this is my second act, but it's really like my fifth act. So, yeah, I did. I started out in journalism. I was a society columnist, a little different than a crime reporter, and regular journalist. I did work. I loved writing for magazines, and one of my most memorable stories was about Governor Celeste of Ohio commuted the sentences of 7 women who were on death row for killing their spouses. It was before there was a domestic violence defense. And so I was able to interview these women, and they told the story about how, it was them or him, and just being stalked and all that stuff. And I'll never forget that. And anyway, but then I moved on to, I was in marketing for Stanley Steamer Carpet Cleaning Company. I was the vice president of marketing, first woman ever to have an office on the wall, which found out that there's a reason why. So I had to leave and file a class action lawsuit for sexual discrimination and harassment against them. I'm not allowed to say the name of the company. Stanley Steamer used a different carpet company. Anyway, and then I was at home, and my husband did a roll-up of real estate companies in Ohio. And so we created and I got to do the brand, and it was called Real Living. And it was the first residential real estate company to acknowledge that women make or influence 93% of all home buying decisions. And back then in the marketing, it was 2 white guys shaking hands in front of a yard sign, handing the key over. And so we really changed the industry and gave credit to like the 60% of the sales force that is women, and then also the consumers. So that was fun. But anyway.
And Katherine, you worked in acting and filmmaking, is that right?
Yeah, I was an actress and a filmmaker. I worked in pretty much every aspect of filmmaking that you could work. I mean, in front of the camera, behind the camera, writing, directing. I was an assistant director. I did costuming. I did literally everything. And then I also have taught yoga. I've also worked in real estate. I worked for my dad's law office for a while. Yeah, so I've definitely had a lot of different turns of careers in my life. But I like this one best. Yeah.
How are we doing on time? Do we have time to open it up for some questions from the audience? Do you have any questions?
So I'm sort of curious about the theme of your ideas are ripped from the headlines, and what I'm thinking about is the headlines that are out in our world today, where maybe our government's getting changed the way I never knew it to be. We have completely divided politics, and I wonder if that provides some meat for your novel writing to help us understand what's happening to us, help us see it, what's happening to us, and maybe help us see a way out of it. Does it provide some headlines that would help you write your next novel?
I mean, I think that anyone who's paying any amount of attention to the things that are going on in the news right now can tell you that the antics of the real billionaires who run the world are very similar to the antics of the billionaires that I know I put in my books. Nobody's based, well, I'm not going to say that. Some of them actually are based on real billionaires. But absolutely, I think that definitely influences what I'm writing, and it makes you think a lot about the fact that these are the people that control the world, and it's frankly terrifying. So definitely that is a big influence on everything I write.
Yeah, the whole idea of greed and excess. My husband was in Congress for one term, and we got to be in DC. I look at it as a gift because it really was. I got to explore. I was a docent at the Library of Congress, and I got to go behind the scenes with all of that craziness. And I wrote a book about it called The Widow, and it's about a cheating congressman whose wife may steal his seat. But anyway, but the things that are in there are true. Like the kind of the observation of how closed that society is. He was a moderate, and you just get squished out. There's no room in the middle anymore. There's just no talking anymore. It's just a very toxic space. I will say that the spouses, which has traditionally been women, but now is changing, at least on the Democratic side, do talk to each other and do try to hold a community still there, in my experience, but it's very hard to, with how divided people are. It's so far apart, and there's no listening. So in fiction, when I wrote about it actually, from a fictional character who's mad at her husband, because I write marriage thrillers. But a lot of the themes that are in that book are true. But I do feel like, too, we're writing fiction, at least my books are for escape, too. And it's hard to put too much of that into a story and have it keep your attention and moving forward. Because if you just turn on the news or read a newspaper, you're inundated with all the terrible.
In my latest book, I wasn't subtle in my reference. I even have one character shout out Elon Musk, and he said, why does Musk get an invite to the Met Gala and I can't get an invite? He says that at one point. And yeah, I do think what I try to do in my books, I can't give a prescription for a way out. I don't have that knowledge or that power, but I hope to at least give an inspiration of characters who have found their way through that space, that all these things are happening around them and they still find their own redemptive arc personally. which is, to me, in real life, that's all you can do. The impact you have on a world stage may be minimal, but what you can do in your personal space is highly influential. So that's what I try to incorporate in my books.
Okay. Hi, thank you guys. So I also write myself, but I notice that sometimes when I'm writing like kind of darker themes or characters that I might stop, in fear of maybe going too deep or not. So I'm kind of wondering, in circumstances where you're writing kind of going to no man's land when it comes to exploring deeper, darker themes, like, do you sometimes stop, or do you find the courage to like move forward and see what's on the other side? So I'm just kind of wondering kind of your process of just like, how do you explore deeper and explore some of these things, even if it's not like so pretty? Does like, suspense give you like an outlet to kind of make sense of things? Does it offer like a perspective of like a, what if I was like a villain, so that's my question.
I mean, I think totally. The book, my first book, Best Day Ever, was based on all my really spectacularly horrible bosses whose words were still in my head, and it came out really fast. And I think it's really cathartic to have a novel where you're not naming like Wes and Jay and all these guys, but they're all kind of wrapped up into one character named Paul. So I do think it's cathartic. And it's a way to process what you see, for sure, in the world, even if you're not like right on top of what you're experiencing, what's going on. Yeah. When I'm in control of the billionaires on the yacht and I throw a storm at them, it's the best, and I mean, they will do stuff that totally terrifies me. And when I'm writing, I don't know where I'm going because I don't have a, outline. So a lot of times my characters on the dark side, they'll do something really, really terrible. And I will have to like close my computer and go running downstairs. And my husband's like, those are not real people. I'm like, oh, yes, they are. And I'm not going back up there. And so they are totally still in my office, and we're just going to leave them there until it's light outside again. So I don't know if that's a good answer, but that's what happens to me.
Well, for me, I will say I'm a big horror person. I'm a big suspense person. So I'm okay with the dark. But I will say I transitioned from romance to thriller and suspense, where I'm putting characters in a lot of peril. When I was talking to my agent about it, I was worried because there has been a discussion within literary circles of like Black pain and putting it in novels and putting your characters through really horrendous experiences. And my agent told me, she's like, yes, you do write about horrible things that these characters are going through, but you always bring them to the light on the other side. And so that's your job as an author. So I'm having them go through, I've done stuff about kidnappings, assault, sexual abuse, but usually by the end, I try to have the character come to some type of realization or understanding. And so that's when I would say, if your feeling is getting really dark, remember what the ending is. What are you trying to say overall in your story?
Yeah, what is that? It can bring catharsis. Yeah, I definitely feel for my characters when I'm putting them through things, and like it'll sometimes like wrench your chest, and especially if what you're putting them through is something that you have personal experience with, something that is personally triggering. But I also find that my writing is best when I am personally triggered by something, when I have connection to it, when I have skin in the game, and a lot of times like you vomit it onto the page, and then you're going to have to edit it back because it's too much vomit. but I definitely think that like that personal connection and what you're saying too, remembering like, where is it going? Like you got to get them through this in order to get them to the light.
Any other questions from the audience? How are we on time? What is the scheduled time to end? 15 minutes left? Great. I'm curious what y'all are working on now.
Well, going back to the dark, I'm actually working on, I have in January a book called The Sundown Girls, which is a young adult thriller. And it's about a 16-year-old girl who was kidnapped as a little girl. And she's been reunited with her family, but she's having a really hard time adjusting. She's been away from them for 14 years, and they're like, we're not bonding with each other. So her therapist suggests, okay, you guys change the setting, go to a new place, go on vacation, and get to know each other. Unfortunately, the location they choose is a former sundown town. So it's also being haunted. And when two girls go missing and she starts to see this manifestation of this ghost, this girl is trying to figure out how are all of these things connected. So once again, it's a redemption story, but the character goes through a lot before she comes through the other side.
Sounds good. My next book is called We Were Never Friends, and it's about a group of sorority sisters who have to reunite even though they don't want to because something terrible happened senior year because one of their sons is marrying one of their daughters. And so they have to, they have to pretend to like each other enough. So it's set over a weekend in Palm Springs at one of their lovely houses, and terrible things happen.
I'm trying to figure out which thing I'm going to do next. I have a number of ideas. I have a book that needs some structure. I have some synopsises. One is a dystopian YA trilogy. One is a ghost story. One is a family drama set in Atlanta. And I'm not quite sure which I'm going to do next.
Oh, can I add one thing? Because my cohort, we have a show called the Killer Author Club, and Kimberly Bell, who's one of my co-hosts, is sitting over there. And we just announced, we have a collaboration deal. It's called Take Back the Night, and that's going to be coming out in February 27. Yeah. Wow. But anyway, it's, this is their first time doing speculative fiction. So it's still a thriller, but it has speculative elements. So it's kind of fun. It's different.
Great. I've often thought that crime fiction, which includes thrillers and suspense novels, as being the American genre. If you go back, you can see that crime fiction, what is arguably the greatest movie ever made? The Godfather, a movie about crime. What is arguably the greatest TV show ever made? The Sopranos, a movie about crime. How has the larger themes of America influenced your work in this genre of crime?
What do you mean the larger themes of America?
Are you trying to grapple with the ideas, whatever is going on in the world? So this kind of touches on a question from the audience. Are you trying to grapple with contemporary events, or do you want to touch on them tangentially? Come at them slant.
I think that we can't help but, I speak for myself, I can't help but be influenced by current events because I do live in this world and I have feelings about it. And I see the things that are going around me every day, and I see the news, and it provokes feelings in me. So I think that it's impossible not to include that in your work, and to hold, as artists, part of our job is to hold a mirror up, right? And I think that sometimes people will see in your work a version of themselves, so different people may read your book and they may they may come away with something different based on who they are and what their point of view is. But I do think that as artists, we have somewhat of a responsibility to hold that mirror up and to say, hey, do you like what you see?
Yep. Well, and that was suspense for you. I agree, of course. And I don't know, like my people are pretty terrible, most of my characters. So they're not, I guess they don't want you to be like them, but they want you to recognize them in the world. Like if I could, like I said before, if I could help someone see a narcissist or somebody, sociopath, whatever, and help you recognize it. My first book, Best Day Ever, I got a lot of letters back from women who, in this story, it's a husband and wife marriage thriller, and not to give too much away, but he's a terrible guy and he might be, taking her to their lake house to murder her. But anyway, at the end of it, so she gets out. But the point is that I would get letters from women saying, their best day ever when they got away from their abusive spouse or boyfriend or whatever. And to me, that's probably the most poignant example in my writing career. But I do think if I can, I don't know, these people are out there and there are lots of them out there and they're everywhere and they're very terrible people and they can't change. When I was interviewing for the women that were survivors of all of that and had to murder their abusers, I also sat down with the guy who works in the prison with trying to reform these people who had gotten away with murdering their spouse. And I said, so what do you do? And he's like, there's no shame, there's no guilt, they can't be fixed. And that's always stuck with me too, because if you see the world only through your eyes and you only have a certain self-awareness that's only of yourself, then you have no shame and you have no regret because that's the kind of person you are. And when you look at billionaires, and I know maybe one, I don't know many billionaires I've met before, like in the campaign stuff and politics, you meet them occasionally, but I don't know that they're all narcissists, but I would imagine if you get to that certain level that you can insulate yourself from anything that's real and you can fly around in a jet untouched by borders or anything else and you can do whatever you want whenever you want to. It must change you. And so if you weren't like that to begin with, I would think that it would be hard not to be very self-absorbed and entitled. So I don't know what the answer is to it, but I do think, I guess the world is impacting what we write, but I wouldn't say there's specific people in here.
I'm going to go back to the first part that you were talking about, the Sopranos and The Godfather, and why crime stories are considered like the American thing. And I would say it's less about the crime story and more about kind of the play of the warping of the American dream and moving up the social economic ladder and how people can get disillusioned about the ability to do that. And these are the rule breakers who were able to do it. And that's why these crime stories kind of appeal to people, because these are people who don't live by the rules and they're doing what they want. And we're getting to kind of live or see through their eyes when we're reading these stories. That they're doing things that they're not held by the social constructs that most of us are operating, and they're just doing whatever. And that's why those things kind of appeal to people, is that they don't want to necessarily break the rules, but it's kind of fun to watch people do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Like the Gilded Age too. I mean, that's another example, like the robber barons and all of those guys.
I remember Coppola, he was talking about The Godfather, and he said he didn't want to make a movie about the mafia. He wanted to make a movie about American capitalism. Genre hybrids are all the rage these days, with romantasy and various others. Crime fiction is also very genre malleable. Crime fiction can incorporate romance or fantasy. Crime fiction can incorporate traditional drama. The Great Gatsby is technically a crime novel. It's the story of a bootlegger. I'm curious if other genres have influenced your work, either intentionally or unintentionally.
I mean, my work definitely blends genres. I mean, I write escapist thrillers. So there's the travel element, there's the thriller element, there's generally a romance element, and then there's the social commentary. So all of those things wrapped up, and you're going to have some family drama in there. You're going to have, so it's like all of these things wrapped up into the story. And I think that that's because these are all genres that I enjoy reading. And I think that there are ways things that make a reader continue turning pages. And, whether that is the suspense or the romance, and romance is suspense, because the suspense is, are they going to get together or are they not? It's not like, is this person going to die? But it is also suspense. So I think that it's very difficult to have a genre that is just one genre. I think that, I love a blended genre book, and mine are definitely blended genre.
Oh, me. Well, I hadn't really thought about it before, but I mean, marriage thrillers, yeah, my people are usually long time married people, so there's not a lot of romance. I'm kidding. There's I did try writing romance. I call it my 2 years in romance, and I wrote 2 series of romance, and it turns out that I cannot write romance. It's just the sex scene. It's just hard. And so anyway, so yeah, don't read those if you stumble upon them. But anyway, but
I want to.
I know. But yeah, but I started out in women's fiction, and then I had those 2 years in romance, and then I just kept getting darker and darker and darker. But it's always about family relationships, and it's always about, what's being said and what's not being said. And it's always about, to me, it is, the suspense and keeping the pages turning. But if you can remember a character of mine, if they stick with you, whether for good or for bad, that's the important part of any story. And so I think it does make it not specifically crime. Hopefully it's just a good book that you want to read and that you race through.
I think my books will always have a romantic element because that's where I started. It's where I feel most comfortable. And I did get out because of the sex scenes too. It was getting to the point that I was like, I have a 4 minimum count. I have to have at least 4 in the book. And I'm like, I don't know how many different times I can write about this.
And seriously, and it's technical. It's like when people are acting, it's not.
Exactly. I had an editor is like, I don't think that's possible.
No. Yeah. I mean, because it's all about staging, and you're like, oh, I don't even want to think about this again. I'm not going to talk about it. So then I hired an assistant for my last book, and I just would go, Nancy, please write this, because she loved writing all that technical stuff. I'm like, it's hard. Yeah. Anyway.
So it's going to have that, but, and incorporates horror, paranormal, again, all types of elements, whatever the story calls for.
Thank you all so much. Can we get a hand for these amazing authors?
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.